Good afternoon. Thank you. Good afternoon. Welcome to the Metropolitan Water District Representatives Caucus and Special Meeting of the Board of Directors for July 2nd. It is 12:36. I am calling this meeting to order. Do we have a quorum, Mr. General Manager, or shall everyone introduce themselves?
Yes, Madam President, I'll call roll call. Director Tommy Favai. Here. Director Desi Alvarez.
Here.
Director Scott Houston.
Here.
Director Don Deere.
Here.
President Gloria Gray.
Here. Are there others in the room?
Yes, Madam President, I'll actually introduce myself and then we'll go to my right. I'm EJ Caldwell, General Manager of West Basin Municipal Water District.
Isa Vasquez, Deputy Board Secretary, West Basin Municipal Water District.
Rick Aragon, I'm the Assistant General Manager and CFO for Western Water in Mercer County.
Raquel Australian, West Basin.
Carla Good, Executive Assistant for West Basin.
Carol Ramos Young, West Basin.
Susanna Lee, West Basin.
Augustine Hogg, West Basin.
And I do believe we have Charles Gale, who's the Metropolitan Water District Advocate of the Month, joining us today as well.
Well, welcome everyone, and welcome, Charles. I just saw you on the DBL trip, so I'm happy you're there today. Are there any folks online?
Yes, Madam President, we do have a number of people online, so I will recognize everybody collectively. Thank you for joining us online.
Thank you all for joining us. Okay, with that, we do have a quorum and we will have public comments. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to speak?
Yes, Madam President, we have not received any requests for public comment for today's meeting, though this meeting is held both in person and virtually. If there's any member of the public that would like to speak, please indicate so by raising your virtual hand. And Madam President, I do not see any requests.
Excuse me. Okay, thank you. Item 4, discussion items. Any discussion items? We have one. Could you introduce that item, Mr. General Manager?
Yes, Madam President, thank you very much. Item 4A is a discussion and overview of the potential drivers of the next biennium budget. For today's presentation, I believe introducing the item, we do have Kitano Kasan, the Assistant General Manager and Chief Financial Officer of Metropolitan Water District, as well as Adam Benson, Finance Group Manager of Metropolitan Water District. So with that, I'll hand it off to Kitano.
Welcome, Kitano. Welcome.
Thank you, and Chair, I hope you feel better soon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So this item was presented to the board, I believe now twice. But the Director Alvarez and the chair wanted you all to hear from us about it. We did try to shorten this conversation, so it's because we had a lot of slides. So Adam is going to walk through some of these slides, and then we can leave a little time for conversation and any questions you might have. Understand that what you're going to see today is big picture. We are not done with some of these projects. We're still assessing them. The numbers are moving, but the board really wants to know and see the magnitude of the projects that we're all contemplating. Additionally, last board meeting, the board did request to sort of do even a deeper dive on what we presented, meaning sometime in the fall, we're going to be coming back, looking at all these projects and give the board some scenario analysis of our need against how we can use one of these projects to fill that need, and what is the associated cost to that if we did do any and all these projects. So we will be back with this conversation in the fall, as we develop our budget. As you all know, we're developing our budget right now as we speak, and we'll be bringing that forward in January. But meantime, these big questions that might feed into the budget and beyond, we're going to be discussing. So Adam is going to go quickly through some of these and we can take questions. Adam Benson, please go ahead.
Thank you, Kitano. Just want to make sure everyone can both see my screen and hear me okay.
Yes.
We can
Yes,
see
we
it
can.
and
I
we
see.
can see it.
Okay, excellent. All right. And I do also want to acknowledge Arnout Vandenberg, who is on my team at Metropolitan. He's with us today, and he's here in case there are questions that come up or there's detailed discussion that requires his expertise. But I do want to thank Kitano for the introductory remarks. As she mentioned, this is the start of an accelerated budget discussion that was requested by several directors on the Metropolitan Finance Committee. The purpose of the presentation is really to keep the board informed of the potential impacts of key financial matters that may come up for consideration over the next two-year budget that staff is in the process of working on now. The team started this process by identifying those items that could have an impact on the biennium budget and for which financial estimates, even if preliminary, were generally made available to us. The topics are certainly not intended to be all-encompassing. We fully recognize that there are likely to be other areas that the board and our executive team will want to further explore. That said, we thought this list was a sufficient starting point for purposes of this conversation, and these topics really become the agenda for the presentation that I'm about to walk through. Before we go too far into it, we do want to establish some caveats because finance people generally don't like to present too much information that's preliminary. But we want to make that caveat clear. All of this is preliminary and it's all subject to change as more information becomes available. And since first publishing this report in April and presenting in May, we have seen and know that costs are changing. And so while in this presentation, you'll see a detailed, comprehensive overview. You'll see various tables in which we drill down into cost estimates and some financial metrics. I think it's important to keep in mind that you should view this data from a high-level perspective, given the changing nature of projects, ongoing cost estimate refinements, project scaling and phasing, and changes to implementation timelines. As context for the discussion, I'm bringing forward a few slides that were presented during the last biennium budget that show overall rate increases through the most recent 10-year financial forecast and some other key metrics, including water transaction assumptions, property tax rates, our debt service coverage ratio, and the breakout of our CIP into both PAYGO and bond funds. Note that these charts were not updated to reflect our most recent third quarter financial projection that was presented to the Finance Committee in May of 2025. At that time, we showed significantly improvement in our 24-25 unrestricted reserves, driven by some of the strategic actions that the finance team and Metropolitan staff undertook to shore up our cash position. But it was largely driven by our reverse cyclic program and some expenditure cost containment on our state water project costs. I present this in this presentation two ways, one with and one without our Pure Water full-scale project. This shows you the base CIP and the cash flow forecast for our Pure Water. And then this slide shows the rate impacts without the full phase one Pure Water project. And you can see that the rate impacts are somewhat less. All right, jumping into the first segment of our presentation. This slide was presented to the Metropolitan Engineering Committee in March of 2025. And it was based on a survey of AWWA agencies. And they identified that the median R&R spend for CIP as a percentage of estimated replacement costs of the survey agencies was about 1.1%. With a $46 billion estimated replacement cost, this would put Metropolitan's R&R at approximately $506 million per year to be at the median of the survey group. Our current CIP has an R&R budget of about $239 million a year. And at the last, earlier this week, at an engineering work subcommittee, The asset management team and risk management team presented a need for us to really invest in our existing infrastructure in order to keep up with the replacement of our aging infrastructure. And so finance wanted to provide some bookend estimates for what it would look like for us to increase our R&R CIP from that $239 million to roughly $500 million per year. There are numerous assumptions that go into this, including the mix of PAYGO and debt financing that we would target, which will drive the specific rate impacts. But if we were to assume that the increase was 100% funded with PAYGO dollars, we'd be looking at a one-time increase of about 15%. And if financed, we'd be looking at an approximately 1.5% increase in our rates per year. Next, turning to our Pure Water Southern California project. In January of 2025, a summary of estimates for phase one under different cost sharing and phasing scenario staging options was presented to our subcommittee on pure water. The staging options would reduce the cost of initiating the project that was shown in our original budget document, as shown in the graphic at right, under different phases. You can see phase one would produce 115 MGD, phase option 2 would produce 75 MGD, and the last option would produce a 45 MGD. The fundamental basis of these cost estimates was a 2018 study, which has been escalated over time, consistent with inflation estimates. The team is in the process of working on revising these estimates and expect that to be released in the latter part of this calendar year. So all of these numbers will need to be updated once we get the 2025 estimate. That said, we did want to provide preliminary rate impacts based upon the data sets that we have today for these three scenarios, which are reflected in this table. The top part of the table shows our overall assumptions for each of the different staging options. In the middle of the table, you will see two different unit cost estimates. You will see a point-in-time unit cost, which assumes that all of the debt for the project is issued at once in year one and that the project is in full operation in year one. And then to try to present the perspective that different assets have different life cycles, we also provided a life cycle unit cost, which estimates the average cost over a 100-year life cycle and includes long-term capital replacements and refurbishments. The life cycle cost is lower because of the lower average unit cost of project water once construction debt is paid off. At the bottom of this chart, you'll see that the overall melded cost increase for each of these options ranges from 10 to 25%, and that we'd expect the average annual cost increase over the construction period to range from 1.1 up to 2.5%. And those are pretty straightforward calculations for how we arrive at those. This chart just shows you the overall design and construction costs for each, the cash flows for each of those different staging options that we've presented in 2023 dollars. I won't spend a ton of time on these slides. They are a little technical, but thought it might be helpful for folks to see sort of the methodology for how we arrive at both the point in time and life cycle unit costs. So I'm going to walk through an example for the 75 MGD option and just note that similar calculations were performed for each of these. The top graphic shows cash flows in nominal dollars. The blue layer reflects construction debt service, its level until the various issuances are paid off. And then you can see that the blue bar slowly starts to ramp down. O&M costs are layered into the graphic represented by the orange color, as are capital replacements and refurbishments reflected in the yellow portion of the chart. We then convert the top chart into 2023 dollars to help facilitate comparison by taking the present value of future cash flows. So we take the nominal dollars and put it all in 2023 dollars in the chart below. And you can see that in today's dollars, the max cost occurs when the project is first completed and in operation. We then take the bottom chart, which again shows your cash flows in 2023 dollars, and divide that each year by the expected yield of the project to produce this slide, which we use to then calculate the life cycle cost. You can note that during construction, there is no unit cost because no water is being produced. When the project is fully operational, the first unit cost appears and decreases in line with the downward slope shown on the prior slide. The point-in-time unit cost for the Phase 1 75 MGD option is about $4,000 per acre foot. And again, that assumes all debt issued in year one and that we're fully operational in year one. And then the life cycle unit cost is about $2,200 per acre foot, again, for the 75 MGD option, assuming a 100-year useful life, all in 2023 dollars. As I mentioned at the top, staff is in the process of refining its pure water cost estimates. And as soon as we have that information available, we'll be embedding that into our climate adaptation evaluations. And we do expect the final EIR and potential board action for this in the first quarter of 2026. Next, I'm going to turn to the Delta Conveyance Project, another key driver of the next biennium budget. This slide was presented in December 2024. We bring it forward as a reminder of the estimated impacts for DCP planning costs. If you recall, in December, the board approved $141.6 million spend over the next 2 years, which has a roughly one-time rate impact of about 6% over the biennium. We did show, for reference point, that net of some refunds that we expect, that the overall rate impact would be closer to 3%. But we did want to bring this forward as it was not included in our original budget or 10-year financial forecast. Similar to the information I presented on pure water, we did a table for the Delta Conveyance Project. The top part of the table shows overall DCP assumptions. And again, I'll note that we're in the process of updating project costs and expect that sometime in the next fiscal year. The bottom section of the table shows Metropolitan's overall 47% share in the project, our share of the overall capital costs and O&M. And you can also see that we've provided a similar analysis showing a point-in-time unit cost of approximately $2,900 per acre foot and a life cycle unit cost of $1,000 per acre foot for the DCP project. This project has an overall melded cost increase of approximately 37%, and we would expect to see approximately 1.8% increase to our overall rates over the 20-year construction period. This chart just shows you the cash flows for the design and construction as currently estimated. And I'm not going to go through this, but we did develop the same slides for the Delta Conveyance dollars showing how we arrived at the unit cost of $2,900 point in time and $1,000 for the life cycle unit cost for the Delta Conveyance project. Next, I'm going to turn to regional conveyance and some new surface storage project. This is really a hypothetical estimate for the east-west conveyance improvements, which for planning purposes are estimated at $4.5 billion. You can see that we're expecting the melded cost increase of this project to be about 26%. And we expect the overall average cost increase over the construction period to be about 1.7% per year. For these projects, again, because there's no yield associated with them, no new supply, we're not presenting you with a point in time or life cycle unit cost. Turning next to yet to be identified surface water storage. In prior engineering committees, Metropolitan staff looked at a number of surface water storage options. We're now moving into the third phase of our study, which will include site-specific evaluations. At the time that Metropolitan finance team was putting this together, the work was really preliminary and the estimates were still being refined. So rather than try to specifically attach costs to each of the different alternatives, we really presented a range of potential costs for these storage projects, which have an overall melded cost ranging from 5% up to 22%. And they have a cost per storage capacity of about $2,900 per acre foot on the lower bound and $6,100 per acre foot on the upper bound. But we will have to refine this as more information becomes available to us. Next, I'm going to turn to the site's reservoir. Staff anticipates cost estimates coming up in July, August, and we're in the process of refining our methodology for how we look at the site's project because it has both storage and yield benefits associated with it. But we did want to present similar information, and so we have developed the following table that shows Metropolitan's overall share in the project, our share of capital costs and ongoing O&M costs. And we're looking at a melded cost increase of about 4% for the current assumptions we have, with an overall annual cost increase through the construction period of approximately 0.6%. Next, I'm going to turn to funding for our zero emission vehicle program. So just want to start by pointing out that Metropolitan's current operating equipment budget is about $8 million per year. And that's only for our fleet, things like heavy equipment, trucks, vans, automobiles. We do have some other equipment we purchase, but it's non-fleet related. So that top line in the table really reflects the amount of money we spend on a pay-go basis to purchase replacement vehicles. You may recall that in December of 2024, the board authorized Metropolitan to execute a credit facility to help with our zero emission transition program in the amount of $35 million. So that's essentially us taking on some debt to replace aging and high critical vehicles to reduce our operational risk and ensure our compliance with various state and federal regulations. That credit facility was approved by the board back in May, and staff is now working with our operations team on a specific plan of finance for these vehicles. That said, even with the $35 million financing, operating equipment needs continue to outpace our assumed budget in the 10-year financial forecast, which is reflected by this yellow dotted line. And so staff just wanted to capture the fact that if we were to meet the needs of the organization for more rapid replacement of high critical vehicles, we'd be looking at a one-time overall rate increase of about 0.8%, which would add about $12 million annually to our operating equipment budget. We are also in the process of working on a detailed staffing analysis to look at current and future staffing needs and the operational risks and challenges that our current staffing levels present. We plan to bring a multi-budget cycle staffing plan for the board to discussion in advance of the upcoming budget, and we're targeting releasing that information in the fall of 2025. And then staff plans to bring that information, incorporate the board's feedback into the next biennium budget. And it's really preliminary at this point for us to attach dollars to this request, but given the historical unfunded position requests, we anticipate that these requests will be pretty substantial. And so we're working on this plan to come back, and we'll have to present that information once it's available to the board based on the staffing analysis that our various groups are working on now. And then I just have a couple of quick bullet points highlighting some other key issues. And again, there are others that are not included here, but we're still grappling with continuing lower water sales trends. We know that we have some additional costs related to treatment for nitrate and arsenic for our AVEC High Desert Water Banking Program. The timing of that is a little uncertain. We're also closely monitoring major macroeconomic drivers, such as tariffs, which could have an impact on our ability to purchase various goods for construction and for general operations, sticky inflation, as well as interest rate actions that may impact our ability to generate revenue on our overall investment portfolio. We're still looking closely at labor costs for wages, pensions, plus our active and retired medical program, and overall O&M cost increases. So again, this is a discussion that was intended to provide various cost estimates that are preliminary, that could have a decision over the coming months as our budget is developed. Our next step is to refine this information and come back to the board with a more nuanced forecast in the fall of 2025. And this team, the finance team, is embedded with our Camp for Water process, in which we're evaluating Many of these projects that you see here today, and that information will be released to the board as it becomes available, with a lot of it targeted for this fall. And that was it for me. A lot to pack in there, but I am happy to take any questions if you have them. And Katana, I don't know if I turn it over to you if you have anything you want to add.
No, not really. I'll, in the interest of time, we'll open up for questions, and thank you.
All right, thank you very much for the presentation. Are there any questions? EJ, can you see anyone who would like to ask questions?
Yes, Director Houston has a question.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Adam. Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Adam and Catano, for being here. I just have a question. I mean, there's a lot in here, but on the regional east-west conveyance improvements, can you all just give us an overview of the timeline for that project this moment, please?
Katana, do you want to talk to that? I know that.
Wrong group, Chair.
Yeah, I know that John
Director.
Bednarski is also on the call, Katano, and maybe John is in a better position to talk about it.
On?
Yes. John, if you're speaking, we can't hear you.
We certainly don't, I don't have a clear answer on that one because it's really a John Banaski's team, but we will, if we don't get an answer today, we'll make sure that you receive an answer. But hopefully, John.
Well, I just want to ask if anybody is aware, because it says the construction period is approximately 15 years on the next slide that was in here. So that realistically what we're looking at for that project.
I see him shaking his head. Trying to figure how to talk. I see him frustrated.
Yeah, Katano, this is Arnott from Finance. I guess, I mean, I would just generally say, you know, this is one of the projects the board asked engineering to look at, but I don't know if it's something that we're necessarily pursuing as the suggested option on how it is to solve this problem. I think it was just something that the board asked us to evaluate as one possible alternative as a way of meeting additional demands in this area. I think there are other probably more cost-effective approaches that are probably better served for this.
I agree, but John, if you can text me and I get an answer, I'll sort of try to reply because I know you can hear us, we just can't hear you. So you can text me something, I'll be able to share. But any other questions as we wait for that?
Not from me.
Any other questions?
Madam President, I have a question. In relation to the zero emissions vehicles, I know that a lot of our cities and several water districts are actually going to delay the implementation of that. Is Metropolitan Water District looking at spreading that out over a longer period or putting a pause on that while we wait and see what those federal policies look like?
You know, we've had internal discussions on that. We called this our zero emission funding, but it really is to purchase a combination of ICE and ZEV vehicles. The board action to approve the credit facility was prior to some of the federal uncertainty around these things. So I think we're in the process of evaluating, but you know, we do have our own internal climate action plans and policies that call for us to look at this. So as I understand it now, we're continuing to work to advocate on behalf of Metropolitan and the region for reasonable regulations here. Because frankly, some of the vehicles that we purchased, they're just not available in the ZEV format. So yes, we're aware, and I know the team is having internal discussions on that, EJ, and I think that's a really good question and more to come. But the facility exists, and so we're working through that now to really figure out what high criticality vehicles we can purchase, but it was always intended to be a combination of both zero emission and ICE.
Yeah, Katano, can you hear me now?
There you go. We
Yes,
hear you.
Hey, we can hear you. Yay.
You know, I've only been doing Teams. How many years have I been doing Teams meetings and I forgot to toggle my switch? Yeah, to the director's question, we don't have a firm schedule for that project at this point beyond conducting the feasibility studies. Once those are conducted, they'll go into the camp for water process and that project will be assessed alongside several other potential projects like the storage reservoir and a number of others that we're looking at. So until a decision is made through that camp assessment, I wouldn't attach a firm schedule to it beyond just us completing our feasibility work at this point. It's not a project like the Pure Water project where we already have set a schedule. And once the board initiates, gives staff the go ahead to move out on Pure Water, we've got a very strict timeline. We don't have that for east-west conveyance. Sorry for the delay there.
Thank you. Thank you very much, John.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? AJ, any hands or anyone else?
I don't see any. If anybody would like to ask it and is joining us virtually, if you could raise your virtual hand. And Madam President, I do not see any requests.
All right, thank you. Well, thank you, Katana, and everyone who made the presentation this afternoon, and nothing else on that item. We will go to
Madam President.
Yes.
This is Desmond. If I could, I just want to thank Katana and Adam and John for the presentation. I think it was very worthwhile to identify all these items. I know a lot of them are evolving, and Med staff is working hard to refine a lot of the estimates and so on, and that a lot of this information will come back in a more detailed and focused fashion in the fall. But it's really important to identify that there are a lot of potential cost implications in a lot of the items and projects that are being considered by the board. And ultimately, there's going to have to be a decision made onto what really is affordable. And when you look at respectively here at some of the individual cost increases associated with each project, they're not insignificant by themselves. If you add them all up in the aggregate, they will be significant. So one thing for Med staff is as you refine all of this and bring it back to the board in the fall, it would be nice to have some kind of consolidated table that says, if you pursue the project A, this is the rate impact, project B, and so that you can kind of see them all in one location and be able to compare them as opposed to the way we have to do them right now, jump around a little bit. So just a suggestion for when this comes back to the board in the fall. And thank you.
We will work hard to get you a much better scenario analysis for them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, John, and I think Adam, I can't see who it is, but Katana, thank you, everyone who made the presentation. Thank you, Director Alvarez, for bringing that to our attention. Okay, is there anyone else who would like to make any comments? Director Deere, any of the board members, Director Houston, or anyone else there?
Nope. Madam President,
Yes.
if I could real quick, I did want to just say thank you very much to everybody who attended and joined us virtually. We had probably one of our largest attendance for a meeting like this. So I want to say thank you very much to all of Met staff that joined us, representatives from the City of Long Beach, Torrance, Surfrider Foundation, Caucus, Las Virgenes, South Bay Cities Council of Governments, Western Municipal Water District, MODOC, and LADWP. So thank you all for joining us.
Thank you, EJ, for bringing that to my attention and all of us. And thank you, all of you, for attending today. We understand how important the budget is, finance is. So thank you for your attendance. Hope that you will continue to come back and be a part of our caucus group. With that, we will go to the next item. Are there any directors' comments or future agenda items from anyone? I'll start with Director Beer,
No comments, thank you.
right, Director Alvarez,
I don't have any comments. Thank you.
Director Houston,
Very good meeting. Otherwise, no comments. Thanks.
thank you. Is Director Survive there?
Yeah, no comments, Director Gray.
Thank you. Anyone else who's there in person or online, any comments or any recommendations for future agenda items, please speak up.
I don't see any.
Okay, we don't have any other comment, correct?
Correct.
All right, well, thank you very much for everyone who attended. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Happy holidays.
Happy holiday.
Thank you, everyone.